Jesus' final warning is happening right now. The world isn't ready. It's a few days before Passover. Jesus is in Jerusalem for the last time before his crucifixion. The disciples take him aside, up to the Mount of Olives, and they ask him the most important question any human has ever asked. Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? Let me show you what those four signs are, and more importantly, let me show you why every single one of them is unfolding right now. Sign number 1. Global disasters. Birth pains begin. Jesus starts with something everyone can see, something undeniable, something that doesn't require theological training or spiritual discernment to recognize. He starts with the physical realm, the natural world, events that shake the ground beneath our feet and disrupt the basic stability we take for granted. Matthew 24:6-8 says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Now, before we break this down piece by piece, I need you to notice something Jesus says right at the beginning. See that ye be not troubled. Don't panic. Don't freak out. Don't lose your minds when you see these things happening. Why? Because they must come to pass. They're not accidents. They're not God losing control. They're part of the plan, part of the warning system designed specifically so we'd recognize what's happening. But Jesus doesn't stop there, because wars, as devastating as they are just the first item on the list. And there shall be earthquakes in divers places, various places, different locations, not just the places you'd expect. The United States Geological Survey tracks earthquake data going back over a century. And what the data shows is startling. The frequency of significant earthquakes, magnitude 6.0 and above, has been increasing. Not linearly, not gradually, but in clusters. Periods where major quakes hit with alarming regularity. Let me give you some recent examples that should make you pause. Turkey and Syria, February 2023. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake followed by a 7.5 magnitude aftershock. Over 50,000 people killed. Entire cities reduced to rubble. One of the deadliest earthquakes in modern history. And it happened in a region that hadn't seen a quake of that magnitude in over a century. And here's what should capture your attention. These aren't happening in isolation. They're part of what seismologists call an active period. The Pacific Ring of Fire, the horseshoe-shaped zone around the Pacific Ocean, where 90% of the world's earthquakes occur, has been particularly active in the last 2 decades. But it's not just the Ring of Fire. Earthquakes are occurring in diverse places. The Earth is shaking, not randomly, not without pattern, but with increasing frequency in diverse places. And there shall be famines, food crises, supply shortages. So when Jesus talks about famines, it's easy to think, that's not relevant to us. But zoom out, look at the global picture, and you'll see something alarming. The United Nations World Food Program reports that as of 2024, over 800 million people worldwide are experiencing severe food insecurity. That's more than 1 in 10 people on Earth. Not just hungry, starving, unable to secure enough food to maintain a healthy life. And it's getting worse. The number has been climbing steadily. In 2015, it was around 600 million. In 2020, it jumped to 700 million. Now it's over 800 million. The trend is clear and accelerating. But why? Why, in a world that produces more food than ever before, are more people starving? Conflict. War disrupts agriculture. Syria's civil war destroyed farmland. Yemen's war has created what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with millions on the brink of starvation. Climate change. Droughts are lasting longer and hitting harder. East Africa has experienced its worst drought in 40 years, with 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons. Crops dying. Livestock dying. Millions displaced. And scientists warn it will get worse. Economic instability. Inflation has driven food prices to levels that poor nations simply can't afford. Currency collapses. Debt crises. Countries unable to import the food their populations need. Now, here's where Jesus ties it all together with a metaphor that everyone can understand. He says in verse 8, "All these are the beginning of sorrows." That word sorrows in Greek is odin. It means birth pains, labor pains. Jesus is deliberately using the imagery of childbirth to explain what these disasters mean. And anyone who's been through labor or been with someone going through it knows exactly how birth pains work. They start gradually, maybe hours or even days before active labor, mild contractions, uncomfortable but manageable, and they're spread out, maybe one every hour, then every 30 minutes, and you can function between them. You can rest, you can eat. Life continues mostly as normal. But as labor progresses, the contractions change. They get closer together. Instead of every 30 minutes, it's every 15, then every 10, then every 5. And they get more intense. What started as uncomfortable pressure becomes serious pain. And the closer you get to delivery, the more intense and frequent they become, until finally, they're almost continuous. And that's when you know the baby is coming. Right now. There's no more time to prepare. No more waiting. The moment has arrived. Jesus is saying these disasters, wars, earthquakes, famines, pestilences, they're labor pains. They're not the end itself. They're the warning that the end is approaching. And just like with childbirth, they increase in frequency and intensity as we get closer. The birth pains are getting closer together, more intense, more frequent. And what does that mean? Something new is being born. A new age is coming. The kingdom of God is about to break into human history in an undeniable way. The old world, this age of human rebellion and sin, is in its final stages. And these disasters? They're not the world randomly falling apart. They're the planned, prophesied process of transition from one age to the next. And here's what you absolutely must understand. Jesus said at the beginning, "See that ye be not troubled." Don't panic. Don't lose hope. Don't think God has lost control. These disasters aren't meaningless. They're not evidence that God doesn't care or that He's not sovereign. They're the opposite. They're proof that everything is unfolding exactly according to His plan. He told us this would happen. He warned us to watch for it. And now that we're seeing it, we should recognize it for what it is. The warning system working exactly as designed. For believers, this isn't cause for fear. It's cause for hope. Because every earthquake, every war, every famine, every plague is another reminder that our redemption is drawing near. The physical disasters are just the first sign that people could explain away earthquakes and wars as natural phenomena. These things have always happened, they'll say. There's nothing special about our time. So he gave a second sign that's even more specific, even more undeniable, a sign that deals not with the world, but with the church itself. And when you see what's happening to Christianity globally, when you see the patterns emerging within the church, you'll realize we're not just seeing one sign, we're seeing all of them converging. Sign number 2, the falling away of the church. Now we're entering territory that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, because this sign isn't happening out there in the world where we can point fingers and say, "Look at how bad things are getting." This sign is happening inside the church, inside Christianity, inside the very community that's supposed to be the light of the world and the salt of the earth. And if you're honest, if you really look at what's happening to Christianity globally, and especially in the Western world, you'll realize this might be the clearest sign of all that we're in the final generation. Matthew 24, 9-13 says, "Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved." Jesus identifies 4 specific things that will happen to believers and within the church in the last days. And every single one of them is happening right now with an intensity that should shake us to our core. Let's break this down piece by piece, and I want you to ask yourself, am I seeing this? Is this the reality of Christianity today? Global persecution. Ye shall be hated of all nations. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. All nations, not just communist countries, not just Islamic nations, not just the places we expect. All nations, every corner of the globe, believers being hated, afflicted, persecuted, and killed specifically because they follow Jesus. Now, if you live in the comfortable West, you might be tempted to think, that's not happening. I'm not being persecuted. I can go to church whenever I want. And you're right, for now. Physical persecution in Western nations has been minimal, but even that is changing. And globally, the persecution of Christians has reached levels not seen since the Roman Empire. Let me give you some numbers that should wake you up. Open Doors, an organization that tracks Christian persecution worldwide, reports that over 360 million Christians, that's 1 in 7 believers globally, face high levels of persecution and discrimination for their faith. Let that sink in. 1 in 7. Not in some distant past. Right now. Today. In 2023 alone, over 4,000 Christians were killed specifically for their faith. That's 11 Christians martyred every single day. And those are just the documented cases. The real number is likely much higher. Over 4,000 churches were attacked or destroyed, bombed, burned, vandalized. Not because they were in war zones, because they were Christian churches. The persecution Jesus warned about, believers hated by all nations for his name's sake, it's not coming. It's here, and it's intensifying. What's happening in the West is the early stages of what's been happening globally for years. The hostility is building. The pressure is mounting. and it's only going to get worse. But Jesus doesn't stop with external persecution. He warns about something even more devastating: internal collapse. People within the church walking away from the faith. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. The word offended in Greek is skandalizo. It means to stumble, to fall away, to apostatize. Jesus is predicting that in the last days, many people who claim to follow him, people who were in church, who called themselves Christians, who appeared to be believers, will fall away. Not just drift, not just become lukewarm, fall away completely. Abandon the faith. Walk away from Jesus. And we're watching this happen on a massive scale. The statistics are devastating. Pew Research has been tracking religious affiliation in America for decades. In 1970, approximately 90% of Americans identified as Christian. As of 2024, that number has dropped to around 63%, and it's accelerating. In just the last 15 years, Christianity in America has lost over 15 percentage points. But it's not just America. Europe, the continent that gave the world the Reformation, that sent missionaries across the globe, is now post-Christian. Churches being converted into bars, nightclubs, and museums. Denominations dying. Entire nations where fewer than 5% of the population attends church regularly. Britain, once called the Bible of the world for how many missionaries it sent out, now has more Muslims attending mosque on Friday than Christians attending church on Sunday in some cities. France is overwhelmingly secular. Germany's churches are empty. Scandinavia is essentially atheist. But the really tragic part isn't just people outside the church rejecting Christianity. It's people who were inside the church walking away. Let me show you what this looks like. Young people raised in Christian homes, who went to youth group, who were baptized, who seemed solid in their faith, getting to college and abandoning everything they were taught. Not because someone presented a compelling intellectual argument against Christianity, but because faith became inconvenient, unpopular, difficult. Pastors who preached for decades suddenly announcing they no longer believe. These aren't people who were never Christians. These are people who were in leadership, who taught others, who seemed solid, and they're falling away, and they're taking others with them. But why? Why is this happening? Jesus gives us the answer. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. As lawlessness increases, as sin is celebrated rather than condemned, as culture rejects any moral absolutes, love grows cold. Not just love for God, love period. People become hard, selfish, self-focused, and that happens inside the church just as much as outside it. Look at Christianity today and tell me if you see love or if you see something else. Christians tearing each other apart on social media over politics, not just disagreeing, hating each other, questioning each other's salvation, unfriending, blocking, cutting off relationships over who they voted for. Jesus said, "The world would know we're his disciples by our love for one another." Instead, the world sees us destroying each other. Churches splitting not over theology, but over preferences.